Welcome to episode 244 of the Brainy Business, understanding the psychology of why people buy. Today's episode is all about decision fatigue. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Today's episode is all about decision fatigue. Decisions are everywhere. We're making them all day long. And even if you know you're making a lot of decisions, you probably don't grasp the full weight of them and their impact on everything you do. Take a moment and think about yesterday. How many decisions can you remember making? Try not to inflate the number too much, since you know why I'm asking, but really think back. What can you actually remember? So, based on that, what do you think? How many decisions do you make on an average day? 25? 500? 5,000? Research shows that people make 35,000 decisions every single day. Can you believe it? Clearly, the bulk of those are done subconsciously, as we couldn't exist if we had to do all those on a conscious level. We would really never get anything done, for one thing, and our brains would use up too many calories for us to survive. So that begs some really important questions, like how do we make better decisions? What happens when we make too many decisions? Is there a point in the day when we've hit our decision number and it's all downhill from there? Or is there an opportunity to recharge those batteries and have a second wind? When do we reach the point of decision fatigue? And what can we do to avoid it? All of that is what this episode is about. And funny enough, this episode came out on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2020, at the end of a year full of decision fatigue, quite possibly more than any of us had ever experienced before. And you'll notice that the episode is going to reference the holiday season, and this is a time with lots of decisions to be made and planning for the new year. And in the episode, I mentioned how it would have been nice if it had come out a little bit before the holiday, as you're thinking about all those extra choices of gifts to buy and who's going where and all that sort of stuff. I decided that this was the perfect time to give this one a little refresh. Now, before we jump into the meat of the episode, I want to remind you that your free decision fatigue worksheet and links to past episodes and books and articles are all waiting for you in the show notes for this episode, which are found within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/244. All right, let's get right to decision fatigue. We humans make an incredible number of decisions each day. Even choosing to listen to this podcast right now was likely a slew of micro decisions. Let's say you're out on a walk. Why did you decide to walk right now? Did you choose to have some water or a bite of a protein bar before you left, or will you have it when you come back? Did you decide to change your clothes or wear what you had on? Did you choose which shoes to wear? Which one did you put on first? Did you go out the garage or the front door? Did you lock the door or garage when you left? Did you tell or text someone to let them know you were heading out for a bit? Did you decide to start an app to track your steps while you were out? Did you grab your ID or wallet to bring with you? Which way did you turn when you left the house? Perhaps you decided to bring headphones, and then choosing that you wanted a podcast instead of music. And then from your backlog of favorite shows, you chose The Brainy Business. Thank you, by the way. And then potentially scrolled through all the content to select this as the one to listen to right now. It really is a lot when you stop to think about it. It's easy to think, I'm going to go for a walk is a single decision, but all those little decisions during the day add up and can cause our brains to get tired. So, how many decisions does the average adult make each day? According to researchers at Cornell, we all make about 35,000 decisions every single day. Yikes. That's so many decisions. No wonder we're tired. Some of those are big choices evaluated by your conscious brain, but many of them, well over 90%, as you know, if you're an avid listener of the show, are made by your subconscious. So what happens when we get fatigued? We may begin to make bad decisions or put things off for later and miss deadlines or stress over them, making it harder to make decisions again tomorrow. You may get trapped in the endless, what do you want for dinner loop with a significant other, and it might feel easier to get into an argument over that small thing or getting annoyed and frustrated with them when it really is just because your brain is too fatigued from the other decisions you've made throughout the day, and you inadvertently put yourself deeper in the emotional decision fatigue hole. And as you do begin to get fatigued, you're more likely to rely on your subconscious rules of thumb to make decisions. You'll be more cautious and make decisions that are risk averse without even noticing the change in your behavior. The quintessential study people reference for decision fatigue is of judges who were evaluating parole cases. An analysis of their decisions that was done after the fact found that time of day had the most impact by far on whether someone would be granted parole or not. Those in the morning and immediately after lunch had the best odds, as high as 85%, while those right before lunch or at the end of the day, bad news. Their odds of being granted parole were basically zero. Did those judges do it on purpose? Did they even realize what was going on? Of course not. But this research can teach us all a lesson about ourselves, and it's one that we can apply in our businesses. I've linked to a few articles on decision fatigue in the show notes for everyone who wants to read up on it in more detail. In general, every article I found gave the same advice, so I'm going to share that quickly and get to my expanded insights later on in the episode, which you may not have heard elsewhere. The typical advice to combat decision fatigue, which is definitely good advice, is to limit the number of decisions you make. Make your big decisions in the morning and be aware of the time of day, eat snacks, take breaks, don't make big decisions late and put them off for tomorrow when you can. On the number of decisions you make each day, the common comparison is to look at Steve Jobs or Barack Obama wearing the same outfit every day. Jobs always wore the black turtleneck. Obama only wore gray or blue suits. If you don't have to bog down your brain with mundane choices, you can free it up so it doesn't get fatigued as quickly. I personally care more about fashion than that. I'm not obsessed or anything, but I do like to mix things up. I would not be happy buying 10 of the same shirts and slacks and calling it a life choice. So instead of trying to decide in the morning what to wear and wasting those valuable early morning best possible decision times, make your choices the night before. Lay out your clothes, accessories, choose your makeup and hairstyle even. Do it all in advance to free up your mind in the morning. Wendy Wood, who I mentioned earlier, talked about creating a running habit. And when you do that you want to make the thing you're trying to have be a habit as easy as possible. That could mean sleeping in your running clothes or putting them out in advance on the side of your bed. You can also prep meals in advance and do all sorts of things to free up decision-making capacity in the morning. Remember to think about the kids as well. Will they get showers or baths in the morning? What are they going to wear? Lay it out in advance when possible, and whatever they need to get ready. You could put toothpaste on their toothbrushes in advance and talk about the schedule before everyone goes to bed. Look at the next day before you wrap this one up. I know for the first few times, if you're already suffering from decision fatigue, this may feel like it's extra decisions piling onto today that you just can't take. Your bike shedding, time discounting brain is going to want to wait until tomorrow or next week or next month to start this routine. Don't fall for it. Doing something today is the best way to make tomorrow easier. And if you're taking a break over the holidays, it's a great time to relax a little, unwind, Make less work and kids' school decisions so you have the capacity to start changing your nightly habits now in order to be fresh and ready to start the new year right. And of course, if you're listening to this later on, the tips apply at any time, and you could do that over a weekend perhaps as well. Speaking of the holidays, if you celebrate a holiday, you may have been making lots of extra decisions over the last several weeks. Who to buy presents for and what to get them, how fast to ship it, what wrapping paper to get, when to wrap the gifts, how to replace holiday traditions that may be missed this year because of COVID. Overstretched brains are rampant at the holidays, even before 2020, and decision fatigue is a big culprit. That can lead to the extra stress and tension and possible arguments within families. Use the judges as your guide here too. Don't have all the calls with family at the end of the day when you and they might be running on mental fumes. If you do need to have big conversations later in the day or buy gifts at night, make sure you've had a snack just before so you aren't depleted of your energy reserves. It's a bit late on this tip as the episode comes out on Christmas, but don't buy gifts at 2:00 in the morning when you're going to be making terrible decisions. There's a reason infomercials do well in the middle of the night. And before I wrap up talking about the holidays, it seems like a good time to mention that decision fatigue is similar to overwhelm, but they are not the same thing. I've linked to the episode on the overwhelmed brain in the show notes. And while the two can have some of the same impacts on your behavior, they don't have to come from the same place. Your brain can get overwhelmed by more than just decisions, and not every decision in and of itself necessarily is overwhelming. It's important to note that if you're overwhelmed from holiday stress or elections or COVID or a million other things, it can make it so your decision-making reserves are already smaller than you would like them to be, meaning you'll be depleted and relying on potentially bad rules of thumb way sooner than you would otherwise. I've linked to a book I've recently discovered called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown in the show notes. What I like about his approach is it's all about doing things that matter to you and not wasting effort on all the other stuff. We all could easily get sucked into decision-filled nightmares if we let ourselves, making choices for others and trying to be intentional about every single choice in every single moment for every single person around us. That will not serve you or anyone else well. As a true testament to the 4-year-old girl we have here in the house, I have started using the phrase Elsa it in honor of Disney's hit movie Frozen as my way of telling my clients and myself to not worry about something that doesn't have to be a big issue. This really helps with getting over bike shedding tendencies as well. In case you aren't familiar, Elsa's main song from the original movie Frozen is called Let It Go. So, when something has you in a tizzy and is using up more mental energy than needed, just Elsa it, let it go, and move on. Yes, it can be easier said than done at first, but I promise you will get the hang of it, and your less fatigued brain will thank you. You potentially know that every episode of The Brainy Business and all my emails end with the words, be thoughtful. And that is a multifaceted statement. Yes, you should be more thoughtful about things than you may have been before finding this podcast and learning more about your brain and its subconscious rules. It's important to stop and question things, to say, why am I doing this? Or, is that really true? But you need to do that on select things. You can't do it on everything. Your brain needs its subconscious rules of thumb for you to exist. Your brain would use up too much energy and you would actually die if your conscious had to take on more than it does now. So quite possibly my biggest tip for this episode, and something you've heard me say on the show before, is to be thoughtful about the things you will be thoughtful about. There are lots of things that seem important in the moment that simply aren't. They may be bike shedding tactics or other habitual distractions from your brain. If you haven't yet listened to episode 123 on the dose brain chemicals, I highly recommend it, and the one on bike shedding, both of which are linked for you in the show notes. Dopamine is a chemical your brain likes. It forms lots of habits around getting more of it, and dopamine goes hand in hand with anticipation. These questions of, will it work out, or will I have time, or whatever, are not serving you well in the long run, but they're hard habits to break because that anticipation is giving your short-term brain the chemical it wants. All that to say, it may feel painful to change your habits and start implementing the tips in this episode to reduce your decision fatigue. Note, I didn't say eliminate because you will hit that wall at some point. We all do. Just because it feels bad or painful doesn't mean it's wrong or that it isn't in your best interest to continue down the path. It might just be your subconscious rebelling, also known as throwing a tantrum, about not getting the dopamine it's used to. That will subside. Take that painful moment as a good sign, celebrate it, and keep moving forward. All right, now that I've told you a little about what decision fatigue is, how it differs from overwhelm, the most common study people talk about related to it, and those most common tips, some of which I've already expanded on, I'm going to share even more of my expanded ideas on decision fatigue to help you really implement this in your own life and business. First, I want you to think about all the stuff you are asking current and potential customers to do in order to do business with you. Are there lots of extra and unnecessary questions you're asking on an initial form or application? Things that could be handled later or maybe eliminated altogether. When someone goes to your website, are there tons of clicks and reading and opening of documents and things to do that could be getting them to that point of mental fatigue? If so, that's a bad thing for you, because if it is a good decision for them to hire you or buy your product, and I'm guessing it is, they are now so drained by the time they would be getting to the buy something or do business with you phase that they might be more inclined to go with the safer option of waiting until later, and they might never come back. This is why it's so important to put the extra thought into your customer experience journeys. You want to reduce that friction and make it as easy as possible to do business with you. When you can reduce the number of decisions you're asking someone to make, it will change your conversion rates for the better. Be thoughtful about that process and experience up front. Really think about reducing the decision fatigue and overwhelm, and you'll be amazed at the change it has when working with customers. This should also be implemented in your sales calls, emails, and other points in your processes. When Nikki Rausch was on the show, we talked about making it easy to do business with you. One of those tips includes how you get a time on the calendar. Nikki shared about how so many people approach this with what she calls the go fish method. Her example was when you call to schedule an appointment with your doctor, and let's say the receptionist says, "When would you like to come in?" And you're now overwhelmed with possibilities, to which you say, I don't know, Thursday? And they say, I'm sorry, the doctor's booked Thursday. When else would you like to come in? So you fumble around a bit and say, Tuesday? And they let you know the doctor's also booked that day. And it just goes back and forth in this game of go fish. It creates unnecessary decisions over and over, causing fatigue that's a bad experience. You may not think you do this in your daily interactions with people, but you would be surprised how often people do this. I see it all the time. Let's say I ask you for a meeting. How do you respond? Do you say, "That sounds great. What works best for you?" If you do, you're pushing the decision back on the other person and making it harder to do business with you. It probably feels like you're being kind and making it so you're showing how flexible you are and that you care about them. You may worry that it would feel pushy or like you're being too forceful by narrowing it down. But in reality, you're making it easier for someone to make a choice, reducing decisions, which they'll be happier about when you get back to them with some really small parameters to start with as a jumping off point. Instead of saying, "Do you want to call me or should I call you?" Or, "Would you like me to send the invite or do you want to do it? Your Zoom or mine? Is 45 minutes enough or do we need 60? an onslaught of decisions that can add up quickly and make this simple situation become a never-ending email chain and a meeting that never actually happens. Instead, look at how you can combine that into one simple step. Whenever I'm trying to schedule meetings, let's say someone finds a time that's going to work on my calendar, I immediately, proactively send an invite with a suggestion of who will call whom, or I include my own Zoom link, and I pick a time span I think is appropriate, and I send it along with an email that says something like, to block the time on our calendars, I've gone ahead and scheduled the meeting with my Zoom and for 60 minutes to be safe. If you prefer to speak over the phone, to use a different link, or to have a different duration, please let me know and I'll be happy to make the changes. 99 times out of 100, there are no changes. People happily accept and we move on with about 10 less stressful decisions on our plates. And I've done this for years. I've never had anyone come back and be upset that I took that initiative. This tactic can be used with leads as well as employees or coworkers, anyone that you're communicating with. Look for ways to reduce decisions and make it easier to work with you and help others to do the same. They will thank you. Not always in an actual verbal or written response. Often they do, but not always. Know that you are making a difference in helping to reduce some stress in their life and yours, even if they can't consciously realize it. Decision fatigue is another reason batching content and tasks is so important. Instead of starting each week by saying, well, it's Monday, what am I going to blog about or post on social media or talk about on the podcast or put in the newsletter or whatever. When you set aside some time to plan out content in advance, you condense all those decisions into one. It's like a super simple brain hack that can give you all the power of 20 plus decisions for the price of one. I decided in September that I would be talking about decision fatigue in this episode, which, as I said, releases on Christmas Day. Not having to think about what to research and work on right now is a huge weight off my shoulders. That helps me make the content as strong as possible instead of wasting precious time and decisions thinking about what to talk about. You can live that joy as well. Batch like decisions together and save yourself oodles of time, decisions, and stress down the road. Another closely related item to batching is delegating. Don't hold on to every little decision and choice on a project. Fight the urge to have things done perfectly in the way you would do them and free up your brain from making decisions that someone else could do. Whether you're an entrepreneur or working in an organization, there are things you're doing yourself that could be delegated. Handing off the right tasks can remove so much stress and unnecessary decision-making from your plate. It's so important. Start with the things you don't like to do or aren't particularly good at or constantly procrastinate on. Could someone else do them better, faster? How amazing would it be to walk in tomorrow and find out it's already done for you? What bigger, more important decisions could that free you up for that no one else can do? There will, of course, be lots of mundane decisions and tasks that you can't delegate away. For those ones that you need to do yourself, resist the urge to do them first thing in the morning. It may be tempting to go through and put a bunch of check marks in your done column, but they may be making it so you're going to be having worse decisions for the rest of the day, or keeping you stuck in that decision fatigue trap, hitting that much sooner. Instead, hold those decisions for times when you're low on the mental capacity scale, just before lunch, or after, say, 3 p.m. That's a great time to do some of those more mundane tasks to get more leverage out of your decision-making abilities. All right, we've made it to the last tip of the episode for overcoming and fighting decision fatigue. Take breaks. Yes, that can be as simple as taking a lunch break, but it also means taking weekends off, not being on your phone all night long and constantly checking and responding to emails. Taking breaks every hour or so to stretch or go for a quick walk. If you can, and you need it, consider a nap. Personally, I'm a big fan of naps, and I do give myself the opportunity to lie down and come back to my work later when I need to. Sometimes even closing my eyes and fully relaxing for just 15 minutes can make a huge difference. And if you aren't someone who does well with naps, find other ways to relax and let your mind decompress. Meditate, do some yoga, listen to music, lie down without the intent to fall asleep. Just remember that the goal is to let your brain unwind. You should not be on your phone, scrolling through social media, or reading articles. Even those tasks are filled with all those micro decisions and will continue to deplete you. You want to find something that will let you recharge and reset. When you sleep, your brain is cleaning up neural connections and solving problems for you, which is awesome. Something similar can be achieved by letting your mind wander, or maybe writing in a journal, if that's your thing. As a vocalist, I love music, and taking a break to either lean back in my chair with my eyes closed for a few moments or even lie on the floor of my office with the noise-canceling headphones on and some of my favorite songs playing can do wonders for my mental state. You likely already know what works for you, so find a way to work it in. And if you don't know, test out some of the things I've already recommended here or ask me on social media. You can find me everywhere as the Brainy Biz for some of my other tips. Know that it isn't selfish or self-indulgent in a bad way. It's actually beneficial to your overall decision-making to take this time for yourself. It helps keep your brain clearer, your decisions stronger, your work better, and more meaningful. Taking care of your brain is important, and using the tips from this episode to reduce decision fatigue will really help you be more productive, less stressed, and produce better work. Sounds good to me. As a reminder, the top tips from throughout the episode are to reduce and eliminate unnecessary decisions, batch your content, delegate, make it easy for others to work with you on your website, emails, phone calls, everywhere. Fight the urge to do a bunch of little things first thing in the morning. Save those for your lull times of right before lunch or at the end of the day. Be thoughtful about what to be thoughtful about, and where to devote your precious energy. Elsa, everything else. Let it go and be thankful you don't have to muck up your mind with it. And of course, take breaks so your brain can recharge. Remember, these are summarized for you on the worksheet for this episode, which can be found along with the show notes at thebrainybusiness.com/132. You'll also find links to all the great books I talked about in this episode, like Wendy Wood's Good Habits, Bad Habits, Essentialism, Friction by Roger Dooley, and Nikki Rausch's The Selling Staircase. You'll also find links to the past episodes on the dose brain chemicals, bike shedding, habits, the overwhelmed brain, and more. So what got your brain buzzing as you learned about decision fatigue today? For me, I've been working on optimizing my processes and systems recently, and it's a big focus for me going into 2023. When you can streamline the things you do and reduce the unnecessary decisions in your life by making them habits, it can really help you to do more and better things. At this time of year, I teach a class on goal setting, and one of the first things we focus on is clutter. Yes, physical clutter is probably the first thing that you think of, maybe the only thing for most people, but there are more types of clutter, and they're all impacting your cognitive load and likelihood for decision fatigue. We have technological clutter, all the emails and disorganized files and Slack notifications and social media pop-ups and text messages and that terrible red bubble letting you know how many things you need to attend to. There's also mental clutter from when you try to keep too many things in your mind at once instead of having a place to keep things that aren't needed right now. And also emotional clutter, which may feel like it's the same as mental clutter, but this is a category all its own. This is the guilt you hold for missing a meeting last week and dwelling on what might have been, or the million times you run a scenario through your head because you're worried about what your boss is going to say. All that clutter, all the different kinds, they add up. And while some of it is important stuff, a lot of it is just bogging you down. And there are ways you can streamline your processes, mental and physical, to get more done. Yes, that could be wearing the same outfit every day like Steve Jobs, Or it might be reorganizing your electronic or physical files so you never have to search for anything, or making it so your space is visually beautiful and streamlined instead of full of stuff. It might be also setting up a system where you can keep random thoughts electronically in a way that's easy to access so you don't need to hold them in your brain all the time. The more you streamline and plan while you're in a cold state, before the moment of distraction hits, the easier it will be in the long run. Like I said, systems, processes, and procedures can help reduce the number of micro decisions you need to make each day. And they can also help you maybe be able to bring on new team members and make it easy for them to join and take more stuff off your plate. That is definitely a focus for me at the Brainy business right now. So what about you? What are you going to focus on when it comes to decision fatigue? Come share it with me on social media, where you can find me as the Brainy Biz pretty much everywhere, and as Melina Palmer on LinkedIn. I can't wait to hear from you. And of course, don't forget about your free decision fatigue worksheet, as well as related past episodes like those on the overwhelmed brain and its impact on decision making, time discounting, habits, the dose brain chemicals, and more, as well as related books and articles. It's all waiting for you in the show notes at thebrainybusiness.com/244. And just like that, episode 244 on decision fatigue is done. Join me Friday for a brand new episode with Evan Nestorak, Editor-in-Chief of Behavioral Scientist. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.